idea.
Well, so far worked out pretty well, but
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Hopefully you can see my screen. Excited to have you here for this training session, building a pipeline of leads. Last year, we ran what we call the Fall Learning Series, and it was the following year. So almost or a year and a half ago, we ran the Fall Learning Series, and we got a lot of positive feedback from it. And so we started doing one-off trainings because we kind of felt like there's been a gap between, you join the platform, you attend an onboarding live with other coaches, and then you're just kind of thrown into the experience and hope to learn as much as you can. And some people have done that superbly well, but I think even with getting onboarded quickly and building your business, there's still a lot to learn from other folks. So we decided to run it back this spring. We'll be doing these for the next 6 sessions, and we're really, really excited to feature some of our top highest performing coaches, both from a revenue number as well as number of clients helped and outcomes achieved. So today we're joined with Mahmoud and Ben, two of the top coaches on Leland. I'm sure you've seen them around the community Slack with our coach community. They have been excellent examples of so many of the things that even when we were planning this session, it was pretty obvious that we would turn to them to help us in this effort. So excited to have them today. Throughout the sessions, you will be seeing other coaches, but we also want to make this as engaging as possible for everyone. So this isn't just about me, Mahmoud, and Ben. This is about everyone. So if you do have a learning or something that you personally want to share, please do. There are a lot of really, really qualified top coaches on the line here today as well. So we'll make this engaging and hope to use the hour to make sure everyone feels like they're leaving with really great advice and tactical next steps to grow and improve their business. So Mahmoud and Ben will introduce themselves. I can get started. My name's Erica. I'm one of the co-founders of Leland. I run Experience here. You've probably seen me in the Coach Slack. I also run our onboarding sessions. So I've had the great pleasure of working with so many of you, and it's been a delightful experience. I started my career in consulting. Then I did a bunch of random things. I didn't know how to summarize that time of life, one of which was I started an e-commerce brand that was picked up by Nordstrom. That was a fun time of my life. And during that time, John reached out and recruited me to join the founding team of Leland. So I did just that. And I haven't looked back. It's been an amazing experience, but super excited to hear from Ben and Mahmoud today. So I'll pass it over to you, Mahmoud, and then Ben, your slide comes after.
hey everyone, my name is Mahmoud. I'm basically trying to become like Erica and Ben, so that's what I'm good for here today. I'm currently at Stanford over at the law school. I'm in my last year here. So primarily work with law school applicants. Also went to grad school over at Oxford. So I have a number of master's programs folks I'm working with, and I had 3 week stint over at the business school here at Stanford, which Ben actually did help me with. So I can definitely vouch for him in terms of being helpful there before actually leaving that program. So I have worked with a couple different MBA students as well. I kind of came to this honestly, and I think this will reflect in some of my comments later on. I grew up in suburban Atlanta. I spent my entire career prior to coming here in public service and just spent a lot of time thinking about, from the perspective of someone that didn't necessarily have parents who grew up here and didn't really know the ins and outs of how you manage a career. I was trying to think about how do I make an impact. And so I spent a lot of time in kind of formal government capacities. And now during my time in law school, really thinking about how can I expand the ways in which I think about helping people. And so a lot of the clientele I get have a similar mindset in terms of thinking about how is it that their grad school path fits into that. So that's kind of my niche, I guess, to the extent that I have one. But excited to keep talking and get to know y'all more.
One really quick thing about Mahmoud. Mahmoud joined the platform, and I think within like 1 week had like 20 different law school clients. I'm not even exaggerating. It's probably more than that, Mahmoud, would you say?
Uh, Probably a little more, but I got a story why, and maybe that'll be the first answer, but we'll get to that.
I love it. Well, yeah, so absolutely crushed it and has really, really helped grow our law school category as well as master's program. And I've even referred him to several of my own friends who have come onto the platform, and he's helped them reach some really big milestones. So can definitely attest to the quality of coaching he provides. Now passing it over to you, Ben. And oh yeah, you did that intentionally. That's not a glitch, right?
Yeah, I did that intentionally. I think
Okay, awesome.
just to start there, even like I think one thing that I think we can touch on throughout all these programs is kind of how Leland fits into your life. because I think a lot of people are working on the puzzle pieces and how coaching fits in, the extent to which they want to evolve their coaching practice and integrate it with the other things that they're doing. Personally, I think one of the cool things that I've seen is how a lot of the skills and a lot of the time and effort put into coaching has rippled out into a lot of the other work that I've been doing. And that can be even just pure B2B deal making, stuff like that. I feel like a lot of the coaching stuff I've been doing lately actually helped with a bunch of different startup negotiations I've been working on with several different folks in my personal and professional life. So I think that the overlaps are understated in many respects. But similar to Mahmoud, also like kind of grew up in random suburbia in Queens and New York, and like I think also didn't have any guideposts when personally when I was applying, at least. And I had my parents are in like industrial design and fashion kind of areas. So business world, I think, was, and how to navigate it was pretty amorphous to me. And so that was kind of my impetus for like getting into coaching. And I think frankly, building out a lot of independent practices that I worked on. I did the institutional stuff at McKinsey and then the mayor's office in Chicago. And then went and was in the exact same dorm complex as Mahmoud is sitting in right now when I was at GSB. So have primarily been working on that. And I think a lot of the writing oriented focus for those of you that have or are thinking about a writing focused niche, maybe an essay niche, that's kind of how I started on Leland and how I feel like I built out the core of my own coaching practice. But have also been doing a lot of stuff in terms of how to systematize coaching and even work with a bunch of coaches on their own practices. So super excited to be here and share whatever we can.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Also, yeah, plug for Ben as well. You've probably seen him in the coach Slack, sharing learnings, sharing wins. He has been so pivotal to our coach community's engagement. So really grateful for Ben and all he's added here. I still remember when I got introduced to Ben and I did his, like, at the time we were interviewing every single coach before they joined. So I actually ran that interview with Ben and I'm proud to say I led him on the platform and haven't looked back. He's been incredible and really grateful for the impact he's made, not only in coaching and helping users, but also helping several of our coaches as they built their business as well. So excited to have you all here. Today's objective is to learn how to build a steady pipeline of coaching leads. So understand how lead generation works based on a series of different actions to drive awareness to your profile and compound over time. We have made this deck based on studying for the past 3.5 years that Leland has been around, what we've seen be successful and how we've seen like kind of the case study of our most successful coaches in terms of developing leads and building a business. So hopefully you get a lot of value out of these tips, but also we know that everyone has their secret sauce. So if there are things that you've done that aren't covered, please share them. Again, we want this to be good communal learning, and we know that everyone kind of has really great tactics that work. And while these might be things we've studied and seen in practice, definitely open to learning more so that we can continue growing as a Leland community. I always say in onboarding, coaches grow when Leland grows when our coaches grow their business. And I hope you all feel that communally as well. When one of you have a successful business in one category, there's so much abundance here that can directly impact other people in that category as well as across categories. I've seen people refer their siblings, their parents, their coworkers. My mom is even using Leland right now, believe it or not. She wants to go back to the workforce. So I set her up with a coach. We see coworkers, classmates. So really there shouldn't be any gatekeeping here, because at the end of the day, like the stronger the Leland community, the better it is for all of our coaches. So the agenda here today, we'll talk about increasing traffic to your profile and then optimizing your profile for lead generation. So how I kind of think about it is, part one is, what are you doing to actually get eyes on your profile? So like the marketing you're doing. And then once people are on your page, how are you converting them to take an intro call with you? A lot of, I find the profile is a lot of telling. You're telling them, I help people like blank, or I've done X. And what we really want them to do is we want them to get on the phone with you, because by getting on the phone with you or coming to one of your events or looking at your materials, that's where you can really showcase how you'll actually work with them. And it's not just in writing. So however you can optimize your profile to lead to the next action that you want them to take, which is chatting with you, we find to be really powerful. So I'm going to ask Ben and Mahmoud, let's get started with this, and then we can drive into the more specifics that aren't covered.
Yeah.
take it away.
I'll just start, Ben, if that's okay. So, kind of the story I alluded to, how things kind of, I think, popped out for me at the beginning. So, this actually happened before I joined Leland. It was, I want to say about a year and a half before. I had about a month before I was starting law school. Or I'm sorry, not starting law school. It was at the end of my first year, going into the second year. It was the end of the summer, and we have weird schedules, so I was done working. And I was kind of restless, and I'd had this period of maybe like 3 weeks where I'd had like 10 different random people I'd gotten connected to just through my personal life who wanted to talk about law school admissions. And it was great. I love doing that. I know, all you guys have probably done that in different capacities. Um, but it got to a certain point where I felt like I was having the same conversation over and over. And so I started to think about how could I potentially share some of this information more of at a mass scale. So, on the one hand, I know there's people I'm not reaching. On the other hand, it's just a better use of my time. Um, so I set up a bit of an experiment where I made a post on LinkedIn and I basically said, hey, I go to Stanford Law School. I am a first-gen immigrant. This is all the stuff I've done and some of the questions I have in mind was coming into law school. I'm happy to talk to anyone who wants to talk for 15 minutes for free. And I set up one of those Calendly things for, I don't know, I think about a 2 week period. And I went to bed. And then overnight, I think I had like 200 people that signed up. And so at that point, I knew I'd made kind of a mistake because then I kind of screwed over my next 2 weeks. But it was great because I had a lot of different conversations with people, most of whom, I hope the conversation was helpful to them. But that kind of one event, I didn't realize until years later now, metastasize into people finding me indirectly through Leland, or in a couple different cases, I'd actually totally forgotten I'd spoken to them because I talked to like 100+ people over the course of 2 weeks. And then they signed up on Leland because I'd done that initially. They saw that I was doing this and then they followed up. And then there were a bunch of people that also found either through their friends, whatever it may be, that I had like done this before. And so it wasn't that I was necessarily leading with Leland. I had kind of established that I was the kind of person who was going to try to offer people advice anyway. So I do think all of you guys are on board as coaches right now. There's a way of doing that where, of course, you're not trying to hide the ball in Leland, but I think the pitch that you make, if you're willing to do something, I mean, I wouldn't recommend necessarily like setting up 2 weeks of free calls, but if you are willing to do something like one of the AMA events for an hour that Leland sets up, but you kind of lead it with the premise of there's all this information I've had, which I wouldn't have had if someone else hadn't told me or if I hadn't personally gone through it. Here's me just freely offering it to you. I think you develop a sensibility among people that, this person really cares about me. And hopefully that is actually true. And then they follow on and you develop that trust and they end up signing up and you go into the formal coaching. So, that I probably added, Ben is the LinkedIn god, but I probably got like 5,000 people from that one post that ended up adding me and everything. And that just keeps rolling on. So I think considering something like that might be helpful for people.
So many good points in there, man. I think to touch on the last thing you said first, I will just say I think social is it's a really interesting way, and you saw like just by putting a Calendly link out there, like how much latent demand there at least could be for maybe not necessarily paid advice, but at least people who want to talk to you. And I think that one of the hardest parts about building a coaching practice, I think, is finding that happy medium between, okay, I don't have any leads or anyone I'm clicking my profile and then booking intro calls, all the way to, oh, I've almost like opened the floodgates and now I have 7,000 intro calls booked. Like that's also not like, I would honestly prefer the first one of the two of them. So it's trying to find like, how do I position myself such that it's not like anybody who's reaching out just reaches out and it's just an unlimited amount of calls. But I think using social to that effect is good. And I would say it should really be super focused on what is the value that you're going to add, and everything that you do is genuine and has your unique voice embedded in it. So your kind of vibe, your attitude, the people that like, if you're all about direct feedback and giving people the best chance that they can to get into certain programs, well, I think like your voice that you use in your articles, in your profile, in your social, whatever, it should all kind of be a tide moving in the same direction. And even if everything you ever write in your whole life doesn't have to do with your coaching business, that's probably healthy. It should still kind of feel like you. But to get to some other points that I think are really important in terms of unlocks and growing a brand, I think I think one really important thing is pick a niche. Like pick one thing, especially when you're starting out. Especially now, I mean, Erica, you could tell me the number, but I think it's over 1,200 coaches now that are on Leland. And so there is a real how do I stand out question. And so I think like for me, I focused specifically on Stanford GSB's essays when I came on the platform, and I talked about all of the writing expertise that I had from my various walks of life and positioned my entire profile around that. Once I started getting a certain level of demand, then I realized, okay, I've got this essay thing. How can I build out from there? Maybe I can actually start taking on more MBA focused, more MBA general clients and use the essay as more of a spike couched within a much larger offering potential. So I think that's really important. I would also say, guys, like I have a general like mentality I think that is helpful. I try to apply this to everything that I do as much as I can, but especially for coaching, I think it can be a little overwhelming, especially when you're starting your business, which is, hey, oh my God, I have all these things I need to put on my profile. How do I get my word out there? Do I host events? Oh, wow, I have to create all these packages. Oh, what should my hourly rate be? There's a million questions at once. And so from a little bit of a stepped back perspective, I kind of think to myself, what is one thing that I can do to just like Pareto net improve my practice like this week or today or whatever it is? And so maybe earlier on, it's just like create one really, really good package, super detailed, force yourself to just go in and put all of that work into one discrete thing. If you do that 5 times in a week, you'll have 2 packages, you'll understand your hourly rate, you'll have your value pitch, and you might have some other sections of your profile really strong. So standing out early on, I think, is just really investing in all the materials that stand alone on your profile and also making sure that everything you do points in the same direction. So I'll stop there, Erica.
I love it. Thanks so much for sharing, both of you, and really, really great insight. Anyone else on the call today have anything they want to share in terms of growing their business? Like maybe things you tried early on that have stuck and kind of been an unlock for you? Yeah, come on, Tim. Ben's calling you out in the chat.
I would say, like, honestly, for me, the thing that comes to my mind is like, maybe this goes without saying, but I just try to do like a really good job with clients and be really open to the idea of like working together on more things. So I have a lot of clients that like will start with like, oh, I want to do 1 or 2 schools. And then once they realize how helpful it is, sorry guys, I'm exercising, I'm a little out of breath, but once they realize how helpful it is, then they, will add schools down the line. Or I even had one client, we worked together. She went to Wharton. And then when she was applying for her, like for career stuff, then she reached out to get a bunch of help there. So it's like, if you just do a good job and keep a really like good relationship going, like that's probably the biggest pipeline for new business for me. So
Totally agree, Tim. And I think I talked to Ben about this the other day on a call we had, which is like, if you can help even one person get into their top school or their top job, like that equates, I think, almost immediately to 5 new clients. Like people talk. When Mike, our product manager here at Leland, got into school, he worked with Carrie on his HBS application. He posted about Carrie on LinkedIn, tagged her Leland profile, and within like 24 hours, I think she got over 50 messages saying, hey, I saw Mike's post. So it really goes to show that like you can be really great at sales, great at marketing, but really what's going to bring someone over the line and like help you build your business is that the quality of service and then the referrals and the reviews that you can speak to. So I'll just run through these slides. I know we have a lot to cover today, but what does brand even mean? So kind of just like your identity, the narrative, how you want to be recognized, the intangible elements, and the experiences that your customers have with you. So I know Ben spoke to this kind of from like picking a niche and how he's built his brand around that. And then obviously Mahmoud with his brand being, this was my background. This is how I broke into the space and I'm want to share that with you. And then Tim, obviously speaking to a brand of really building those positive experiences that compound over time. Your coaching brand directly impacts your ability to fill your book of business. And we've seen this time and time again, like those who are crushing it on the Leland platform tend to have a very specific and built out and intentional brand. So they're getting, more intro calls. They're working with clients for not just one session, but repeat sessions, to Tim's point. They're positioning themselves as someone who's dedicated versus someone who just coaches on the side, which I think is a really big thing here at Leland. Even though a lot of you do this as a side hustle, you don't want your brand to be the side hustle coach. You want to be known for, yes, maybe you have limited capacity in terms of how many clients you take on because you do this part-time, but for those moments that you do have available and have purchased by clients, you are all in. Like they should not feel at all that this is a passion project or a side hustle or like a supplementary income to whatever else you're doing. And not to say that you can't be doing that. We find a ton of value in coaches like that. Mahmoud, is in school full time and at one point 2 different degrees. But still, when you are on with those clients, they are not feeling that difference in quality. And then finally, your reviews. I think this goes a really big way or a long way. You can see on some coaches' profiles like a review that's like, hey, I really liked working with this coach. They were great, versus like a novel as to how this coach was pivotal in them reaching their goals. And I like clients read reviews. That is like so important. So the quality of your delivery and the review outcome is going to be one of the most powerful tools you can have. Again, people can read what you have to say about yourself on your profile, but reading those endorsements and seeing how you actually in practice coach is going to be what drives the highest number of leads your way. So kind of just what goes into your Leland brand. So background, we talk about this. So the services you offer, where you came from, where you go to school, your sales, so how you sell, your reviews, your posts, all of that. We'll talk about that. The client experience, which I feel like, honestly, this is so well done based on what Mahmoud, Ben, and Tim have all spoken to. We kind of went from background to selling to client experience, and then obviously conduct while actually on the call. So, kind of touching to my earlier point, this isn't a side hustle that should be shown to those that you work with. And a lot of times I say on onboarding, if you've been there recently, like this is different than taking a free call on your commute to work. And obviously, if you have an established relationship with someone, that's totally fine. And I think they probably find that to be like high value. But when people do book on Leland, they have usually exhausted their free resources. So like school resources or club resources. And now they're looking to level up and actually invest in hopes for a high ROI. And so by feeling that professionalism really makes them feel like they've invested in a premier experience. I'll pass this over to you, Ben. Over time, I know you talked about like the initial things that you did. So picking a niche, really driving it home, other things you've done to build your brand. But what are some things you've done to strengthen it since you've been here almost 3 years on the platform? What has helped strengthen it?
It's crazy to think about. I would say some of the biggest things are, I think holding regular classes and events is huge. I think it's a great way to just get your face out there consistently in front of a lot of people. And every time you do an event, try to challenge yourself to say something new or to add something. You don't want to sound like a broken record, because you know what, also people might be attending multiple. So you always want to try to give some net new value every time you show what you're doing and explain what your coaching is all about. I also think holding like a class or some kind of like targeted course on a high demand skill. So for me, I held like a class on the What Matters Most essay that ended up turning into a class through the recent boot camps, for the MBA boot camps, and deferred. And it's also been a huge conduit towards getting folks to work one-on-one and on a comprehensive basis. I think, Erica, of the 5 people or 6 people that I'm working on with deferred, I think 3 of them came directly through the MBA boot camps. I think if you're talking from a pure like just lead generation perspective, and like you would with any business, I think having that consistent event, class to boot camp to ultimately one-on-one package funnel is really, really smart. But I also think there's a couple of like small tactical things I've done as well to strengthen my brand. I think while it's definitely true, Erica, I completely agree that having a novel over a tweet in terms of like the review length like is super important. You want to generally have like lengthy reviews that are substantive, and it's not just like work with this person. Like that's not really that interesting. But I will also say that volume of reviews, actually doing the small thing, come up with a template or an outreach note or email you send to clients after you've worked with them to solicit those reviews, because it's good for Leland. It pushes other coaches to get more reviews. You build your own practice by accumulating 20, 30, 40 reviews over time. And when clients go to actually sort by number of reviews by category, they'll see you, and they'll see you earlier, and kind of like under the same logic of, are you going to go to a restaurant on Uber, like on Google Maps that has like 5 stars, but like 2 reviews? It's like, you're much less likely to go than if it's even like 4.8 stars, but 43 reviews. Like that's a much more reliable review combination. So I think consistently soliciting the small backwards looking inputs from your clients so that you can actually add outcomes, add reviews to your profile and beef that stuff up as well. In addition to creating a continuous pipeline of putting your face out there and having leads and people to work with.
Thanks, Ben. Mahmoud, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I know. I mean, Ben hit most of the main points, so I don't want to duplicate, but I would just reiterate, really use Leland to help with your brand. I think that there's so many great people on the team like Erica who want to help you out with some of the more kind of institutional functions. And so things like the boot camps, things like the classes. Honestly, even just like going, I mentioned in the chat, there's like this Bay Area meetup. I met a bunch of people last year when I went. You develop friendships with people, you have messages with people, and then something comes to mind, and then they send them to you, and things kind of work out that way. And so I think there's that, and I think a second part that maybe makes me different. I don't know. I take it as very important, even in the intro call, maybe especially in the intro call, to be kind of brutally honest with people. And if there are situations where I feel like maybe somebody is not necessarily on track for their goal and like there's a way there, but it's going to be hard, then I will be very blunt and kind of forthright in delivering that message. And in the beginning, you know, I was a little more hesitant to do that because I thought I don't want to hurt this relationship. I want to kind of compel them to work with me, right? But then I got to a point where I was so busy, I was kind of like, okay, well, I need to cut some people. And so let me just be honest with them. And if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. Ironically, that helped, I think, more with my conversion rate than anything else. Because I think what people saw was that I was willing to be honest and I wasn't going to bullshit them. And if I'm willing to not bullshit them, then I must be willing to kind of take them down the hard path to getting them to whatever their goal is. So, you know, I don't know if that is necessarily something that kind of transmutes into like a mass perception thing, but at least in terms of that flow of what kind of one-on-one conversations, then, you know, I think that's kind of helped my brand become what it is, which is hopefully not being an asshole, but, you know, being honest.
I think it builds trust, right? If you're doing it in a way, because I think, yeah, again, Ben and I had a conversation about this kind of recently. It's like, if you can feel that someone is being honest with you and like isn't trying to be salesy, that's going to stick, right? Like, oh, this person's actually invested in me. They're looking at this from how they can actually support me. And maybe it's not you as a coach, Mahmoud, who could help that individual, but there's someone else who can. And so I think there's a lot of value in figuring out, as part of brand building, how you run and operate your intro calls, but also how you like determine who the right people are that you work with and how you deliver feedback, how you deliver that client relationship in general. Does anyone else on the line, I know there are a lot of shining stars here today, have anything they want to add here? And even if you are new to Leland, but you've been coaching elsewhere and have built successful practices, I think those learnings are great as well.
I have a couple things to add. So super excited to see people, first of all, off Slack. Someone mentioned that. And I think brand, so I spent a long time working in corporate on brand building. And then I have spent a lot of time thinking about what that means for us as individuals. The word that comes to mind repeatedly in my mind is fit. Brand equals fit. And I think if we see that word instead of nebulous brand, you start to approach life with an entirely new set of eyes. So as an example, like my 13-year-old, you know, his brand fit is Nike right now and his Jordans, and he's trying to kind of externalize, you know, what that's all about. But I'm teaching him to use his value words of like what he stands for to lead with that. And as coaches, when you have an intro call, it's amazing when you lead with your values. Hopefully they've read your profile, you know, you've sort of pre-qualified the match. But when you're articulating your values, like, you know, I'm about service, I'm about impact, I'm about, you know, things that are meaningful to me, and those are consistent actions they can see in practice. It's that vulnerability of connection that they're like, okay, this person speaks my language. We can see each other deeper on a level and they're going to get me, or they're on my plane. And then to take it a step further, just on the point of vulnerability, I think it's just such a beautiful experience when you can connect with someone and show just how imperfect we all are, right? And lead from that, because they're coming into coaching probably in a space of feeling intimidated, and that they're right, they're standing in front of hurdles and obstacles. And it's just to be able to kind of, again, diffuse that and bring it down, it just makes the fit more natural. And really, that's what brand is. So
I love it. That is an excellent point, Lindsay. Thank you so much for adding that. And I think, yeah, as you think about your coaching brand and business on Leland, being like very intentional about thinking, what are those things you value? What are the main points you want to drive home when you do an intro call, or when you talk to a client about your coaching offerings, outside of just, hey, here are the services that I'm going to provide. Here are the things I can promise you. I remember one coach, I always think about this. He led one of our sessions and he said, I always start my comprehensive packages saying, I cannot promise or guarantee admission, but I can promise that that you will feel 100% confident submitting this application. And if I can do that, like, this is a successful relationship. And so instilling that in the end user, the customer, the client, whatever you want to call them, makes them feel like, oh, they really understand what the coach's value is that they're bringing versus, what coaching is not. And I think too, to your point, that connection and showing, hey, I've been in your shoes, or here's kind of what I've overcome to now feel comfortable working with you, builds a really amazing relationship from the start, and one that can actually be helpful in the long run. Ben, I see you shaking your head. Mahmoud, anything you guys want to add after Lindsay's point? That was excellent. Thanks so much. And again, please dive in. So a couple things now more tactically that we've talked about. Ben did drop the events and classes. So Mahmoud, I think, huge example. He ran our boot camp last year for law school. And I think that just like blew up his business. Ben, same with being part of the boot camp. But I think with events specifically, because events are so important, is like to be patient. I think a lot of times what I've seen with coaches, especially new coaches, is they'll maybe join one event and say, hey, I didn't get any leads from it. Like, do you have any advice? People like Ben and Mahmoud are running 2 to 4 events a month. Like, that's just normal, 1 a week, 1 every other week, or being involved in some capacity at least once a month. And what happens there is that your face is like continuously being shown to users. You're on our search pages. We're sending out marketing emails, and then they start to see the users, oh, this person's brand, right? Like, oh, I keep seeing law school with Indrani's name. Okay, she must be like a big player of the law school category on Leland, right? So I would say to like be patient in that, and think a lot about the value you're going to bring. I think Ben spoke to this, but he started doing a ton of events on the GSB and like really drove into that, and kind of built a reputation around that. And again, to my earlier point, like not gatekeeping. I think with free events, people worry like, oh, if I give this tip, will people come back? Absolutely. If not even more, because here's the thing, they are coming to these events to see how you teach, what kind of value you bring. And if they come and they see that you're, sharing really, really high quality information, the usual sentiment is, wow, if I could get this for free, imagine what I could get in a paid capacity. Anything you want to add here, Ben or Mahmoud? I know we have our whole next session is actually on events, so probably don't need to go too deep, but any words of advice, Mahmoud or Ben?
Can I pipe in?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you mind? Yeah, so I've been starting to do more events. I think I've done 6 events now, 5 or 6 events. And I do think the patience aspect is important, because you might not necessarily get someone the minute your event is over, but like 3 weeks later when and also some of this is expensive and people have to kind of like figure out their budget and talk to their parents or whatever. And I do have a lot of people that kind of like pop into my inbox a month later saying, hey, I loved your session last month. So I think it's important not to get discouraged if it's not instantaneous. And I also wanted to say, like, for people who help with even job search, but like admissions. One good thing to talk about, I think, in the intro session is to acknowledge that it can be overwhelming and scary, and putting yourself out there to strangers, telling a personal story, and it makes you feel super vulnerable. But that, and then there's other people who say, I don't have a story. So I think talking to them about how everyone has a story and I'm going to help you find it is another good aspect to kind of close that deal. Because if you really encourage them to dig deep and give them some ideas of how to brainstorm what their story is and what their narrative is, a lot of times even during that 15-minute call, they'll be like, oh, now I get it. Now I get what I need to do. Before, they're just feeling like, how do I even pick what I want to talk about, especially for the personal essay, or everything's cheesy that I have to say, or everything's cliche. And so telling them that, yeah, you can write it in a cheesy way, or I'll help you not write it in a cheesy way. But the story, the topic is probably still there. And it really calms them down to like not feel anxiety just brainstorming, because that causes writer's block. So
Thank you. Yeah, that's excellent. And obviously, I've seen it with Indrani's business. When I see those orders come through, I know it's a direct result of, you know, the time and effort she's putting into these events and taking a few more intro calls maybe than that she wants right now. But, you know, then you find, you know, some really big spenders ready to purchase, and that time and effort you invest is definitely worth it. Ben or Mahmoud, did you have anything you wanted to say here?
Yeah, I just think one quick thing with, I mean, I think this varies across categories, but I think the timing of all this is really important too. And so if you're someone who's working with school admissions, you know, for me, for example, for law school, we're coming towards the end of kind of a delayed, very long admission cycle, but people are already starting to think about how do I get going on this for next year. And so, you know, I'm planning on in the next month doing a lot just because a lot of people are starting to think about it. And to the extent they're not, you know, you should probably be on LinkedIn telling them that they should be thinking about it early on. I think that I saw, you know, there's kind of a wave of people who are very, you know, thinking ahead of time and trying to get ahead of things. And then you have a crush of people who wait until the very end. You want to try to funnel your events around those two phenomena. Of course, this is, I think, different professional development coaching context, but just something to keep in mind. And I actually wanted to address Angela's question real quick because I think it kind of dovetails with these events. You had a question about like, should I kind of focus on one category or another? I think to the extent that you can kind of be credible across multiple categories, then I would do it. And I think in terms of how you use the events, I've found you kind of have to do both like generalist events. And so I'll talk about just like AMA, anything for law school, AMA, anything for grad school, so on and so forth. But then you'll have almost like a different category of people who will come out and say like, oh, what I really want to hear about is like the LSAT, in which case I say, I can't really help you, but Ishan can. And so I'm going to send him to him. Or I want to talk about, you know, the diversity statement, or how do I interview? And so you have kind of like different groups of people who are looking for different things. And so, you know, I found it helpful to be able to kind of coach across different categories and like market in that way and have different events in that way. But only because I think I am like equally strong in all categories and I have like equal amount of things to say. So I'd go for it.
I would also love to just double down on some of the stuff that Indrani said. I thought some really good points. I think just the life cycle of events is really important to remember. Like maybe 30% of the outreach that you get is like burst outreach right after an event, but probably 60 to 70% of it comes later in the coming weeks and months, because I think, and by the way, if you compound that and you do like one event per month, you're constantly having that 70% bulk of people who are thinking about reaching out to you. You're just creating an infinitely long set of loops of people who will reach out to you about certain coaching services. So that patience that is required that Johnny mentioned, I think is really important. You're not going to see everything right away after one or two events. If you give up, then you're not even giving that event-based testing the time it needs. I also think one other quick thing about doing events regularly, I think I held my What Matters Most class like 15, 20 times. I can't even remember. And then have done it through the boot camp and stuff. You get way better at coaching. You're constantly putting material in front of people and seeing how they react to it and what resonates and what doesn't, and what slides are a waste of time, and what things you can speed through, and what things that are actually worth spending 20, 30 minutes on. What are the things where you want to solicit group engagement? Can you give them 2 or 3 like, oh, wow, moments during your class or event so that they're 50 to 100% more likely to reach out to you later for coaching services? So I think like understanding that you are kind of in a way like mini mastering a craft when you're doing events and classes is also another reason that you can continuously use them and improve on them. And each event that you put forward in the future, it's going to be so much better, especially than those first few that you throw together and just put your face out there for. So I just thought bunch of good thoughts coming out of that.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna save this because we have our whole next session is on events. Let's talk about articles to get leads. Articles are great. If you are interested in writing articles, reach out to Amelia at joinleland.com. A lot of articles have actually picked up on SEO, and I think that was actually Ben's first unlock on Leland. He wrote an article called like I was the first in my town to get into Stanford. And it got really good search volume, and therefore it was linked to his page and got traction there. So if this is something you're interested in, it's a great way to showcase expertise. People do read our articles, they get picked up by SEO. So yeah, reach out to Amelia if that's something you're interested
Erica,
in.
I have a question about that. I actually was talking to Amelia about it a couple weeks ago, and she was saying that right now it's more about kind of like zhuzhing up existing articles versus writing new articles. So I'm not sure what you guys need or what you guys are.
I think she's setting up that system to help coaches not feel like they need to just like spend all this time writing, but if they can then sign off and provide their expertise and their stamp of approval, it helps at scale. And then
Hey,
Leland,
Erica.
yeah, go for it, Tim.
Sorry, I was just going to throw in one thing. I don't know if anybody else has done this, but I will actually like link my articles to prospective clients too. Like if we in our conversation, if there's a topic and I'm like, oh, I wrote an article on like for Leland on this, let me send it to you. And I think it's a great way to build credibility there too.
I totally absolutely agree with that. I think like even sometimes like after we run coach onboarding and people are like, oh, I have a question on this. And I'm like, oh, great. We have a full article, like giving people additional supplementary materials that showcase like deep expertise is going to be so powerful. And I know, Tim, you've done a lot of that. And so having something that you can like send as a follow-up or a reminder or like a second taste as to what coaching with you would look like is always going to be super helpful. We also have a session on Leland Plus, so not too much I need to share here, but again, I think Leland Plus is awesome. I think what I've seen, the main trends with Leland Plus are usually people are subscribing to Leland Plus that might not be fully ready to commit to the price point of one-on-one coaching engagements. But when they do download Leland Plus or subscribe, they're often overwhelmed by the amount of information and how that actually uniquely caters to them as a person. And so they'll realize, oh, I actually need one-on-one coaching. And who do they usually go to? People that they've enjoyed engaging with on the Leland Plus platform. So they've maybe watched your videos or they've read your sample essays, and they're going to now have a way to directly reach out to you. We've seen that time and time again, and that's actually one of the benefits of Leland. A lot of times with asynchronous content platforms like that just do async, you can't actually get a hold of the person or the author or the instructor. But now on Leland, you can. So you're not only watching their videos, now you can actually have them help you with your essays directly or your resumes or help you case study, etc. Awesome. Let's join social media. Valerie, just to answer your question, I think career coaching will probably be the biggest unlock in the next few months, given that most of our partnerships are around career help. So we just closed LinkedIn, obviously, but we just last week got a huge university customer or partner that is hiring us for thousands of mock interviews with their students, and they're all for jobs and careers. So I think as we continue to partner with more universities and organizations, a lot of that will be around career coaching. And then obviously the network effects, you know, if someone says, hey, I use Leland to get into consulting, then the next person, I met with someone today who said, oh, I use Leland for my Y Combinator app. And, you know, they're probably going to tell, and then they had told their wife to come use Leland for another service. So I think career will always see that ripple effect. And also with school admissions being so strong, the next like obvious step of these huge influxes of grad admissions or college are people who actually need to get jobs. So even customers who I'm sure have worked with many of you on the call today are going to be coming back to land their first, you know, business school internship or break into big law after they get into law school.
Okay, that's so helpful. And I think a lot of the folks that and I know Lindsay's on the line, she's a career pivoting coach that referred me, but I think a lot of folks are kind of mid-career and that kind of thing, especially for LinkedIn Premium. And so I think it's maybe a little bit different of an audience to be targeting. And I was just kind of curious about the marketing work, looking at the website. It has great graphics and different things scrolling across as to what the popular categories are. And it
Yeah.
would just be really cool if there was a way to add in some of that as well. Obviously, we know we need to do our own marketing and branding. That's why this is so helpful, but just a thought on how to even leverage it up.
Totally. And definitely something we're thinking a lot about. We always talk internally in our meetings like, hey, you know, a huge opportunity is exec coaching, leadership, or more later stage career coaching, because so much of what we have done, you know, early on as a company has been kind of people breaking into their first job or getting into their first school program. And now we're seeing, as we are older as a company, that our users are growing with us and the word is starting to get out. Even like yesterday, we had a CEO buy a package for leveling up in his CEO role. So I imagine with time that will continue to grow. Awesome. Okay, social media, super big. Okay, we only have 11 minutes, so we're gonna fly through. But Ben, do you want to just speak to social a little and then Mahmoud as well? Because I know Mahmoud, your original example was about using LinkedIn.
Sure. So I think kind of combining it with this like strengthen your brand portion of coaching, I think there's like this initial part of coaching where you're like trying to find a niche, trying to develop your practice, get those first reviews, etc. And then I think like you really as quickly as possible want to start talking about the impact that you've had and the reach that you've had in all of the people that you've helped, because ultimately people care about, hey, if I work with you, are you going to help me get to the place I'm trying to go to? And so I don't know. I think investing in tools like Figma and Canva is also well worth people's time, so you can kind of design and make your own stuff, but that's a separate plug. I think more importantly, keeping track of all of your outcomes and making sure you have some kind of back-end system. I've been developing this whole set of databases in Notion. Actually, shot a note to Mike earlier, Erica. But like, it's been drastically expediting my ability to go, okay, like I know all of this information about everybody that I'm working with. I understand where they got in, where they didn't get in, where I want to improve, what all of those outcomes and metrics look like across not just one random client, but across all my clients, across all the categories that I'm helping them with. And so when it comes time to write a piece like this, that frankly a lot of people might be interested in, it doesn't require a lot of math. It's just built in. And so I think understanding like people care about results and impact more than pretty much anything, because you can have the prettiest coach profile of all time, but if you're not getting people into the programs that people want to get into, I mean, good luck getting those reviews that you really are going to need to level up your platform and your profile. So I think gearing everything towards impact is really important, and having that focus.
Awesome. Mahmoud, anything you'd like to add?
No, I need to steal Ben's template for this whole graphic here for next time. No, I agree that I think people want to see some credibility in the sense that, hey, why should I hire you to help me do this thing while I've helped other people do this / I've done it myself. And so there's some instant credibility there. I think something that I'm pivoting to a bit, and I think has been helpful in the past year in terms of posting, is sometimes less about what does it look like to get into these places, but just what are some of the genuine thoughts I have about like the experiences of going here. You know, I mentioned I was in business school here I was doing the joint degree for like 3 weeks. I decided very quickly it was not the right choice for me. And so I ended up dropping out, and I made this post about that, mostly because I needed to let people know that this thing that I had been doing, I was going to leave. But I was just very honest as to my thinking as to why I did that. And I got a lot of feedback from it. People just private messaging me about like, oh, like this resonates so much with how I feel in different ways, not even necessarily in an MBA context, but just different parts of their life. And so something I'm actually planning on doing, I haven't done it yet, but once this kind of cycle wraps up with law school, what I'm really hoping to do is like not really make posts about myself, but just kind of highlight, you know, with their permission, of course, like, hey, you know, I have a guy, you know, I just met incredible people through LinkedIn. I have a client right now who dropped out of college 4 times. He's 36. He teaches at a university and now he's applying to law school, right? And so there's a lot of people who can see themselves kind of in that struggle of, you know, life didn't necessarily work out for me, but like I remained kind of steadfast in kind of pursuing my goals and ended up working out. And I think people can kind of really feel drawn towards not just content that talks about like outcomes, though I think it is very important. And especially if you do it, you should do it like Ben did. But really just kind of the human stories behind all of that. And I think we are all very fortunate that we get to meet clients who are across the globe, across the country, very different contexts in life. And, you know, to the extent that you can talk about what some of those relationships look like, I think you'll find kind of that human touch point that other people will resonate with.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think, yeah, finding your, again, to our earlier point, your brand, your voice, what it is that people consistently want to come back to see, right? So for example, with Mahmoud, if it's, oh, wow, he shares really inspiring stories of people getting into law school, you know, from non-traditional or unconventional backgrounds. Like, I'm moved by this. It's the same reason people follow accounts like Humans of New York or things like that. And picking that niche and then continuing to give that content. And then that obviously, like, even though it might not say like, work with me here, here's my link, there is like a very direct adjacent draw then to coaching. Or something I've been trying to do is I've been dropping these like job lists. And while they might be a little spammy, it's helped my account grow to like 20,000 followers. And that like ultimately helps Leland too, because we can attract people who want to go to the job list and then, you know, come to the platform to find a career coach to actually land those jobs. So whatever niche you can kind of pick, and it doesn't have to be exactly what Ben's doing or what Mahmoud's doing. It's just something that resonates with people that you can continue to feed your audience over time, and they can rely on you as that kind of expert or thought leader. And yeah, so just some examples really fast. Announcing when you kick off your business. I saw Mahmoud do this really well when he started coaching. I remember you posted and got a ton of outreach messages that were like, hey, I saw that you're coaching, like would love to learn more. Next is about events or classes. And then I think sharing learnings related to your business. So that could be, you know, things you've learned about coaching or the outcomes, or Mahmoud's case, like actual real stories of users that he's gotten to work with. There's so many different opportunities for you to use social. All right. Yeah, just a couple things. The brand building, I think, far extends beyond booking on Leland. Helps you look like an expert in the space, future opportunities, build your network, community, and paint you as a leader in your respective community. I think there's so many reasons to, especially on social, LinkedIn, like build some sort of presence there. I think it'll, you know, maybe even future jobs that you want or future clients. There's so many different things that come from having an online brand that's strong. All right, we're going to skip over this one. There are templates, of course. We do like a welcome template you can use. We have event templates. Anything that you're interested in, just send us a note. I'm sure we have a template for it. We have a social team here at Leland, so they can always support. All right, Mahmoud, Ben, I'm going to pass this one to you, and then I'll just race through the tips. But I think this is probably the most important part of the second half, is just like, how do you make your profile strong? That's a better question. Let's answer that instead. Take it away, Ben.
Sure. I think having multiple tiered offerings that are speaking to multiple value points for clients super, super important. Giving them options, but within each option, having a lot of detail on how you work, why you're focused on this and have some credibility in this space, and the exact value that you're going to deliver in the time coaching together. I think that really is what comprises a good profile. I also think being priced appropriately is really undersung in its importance. If you have 20 years of coaching experience, look around at the other coaches on the platform who have a similar level of experience. If you are $100 per hour lower, maybe consider raising your rate, because you're going to be compared to your contemporaries or your peers or people that look like you with similar levels of experience. So if everyone else is priced like a fine wine and you're priced like, priced like some boxed wine, no one's going to buy you. And so I think there are some important things that you can do that are just like those staple parts. I think a super strong header is another example. Figure out a niche, target it, speak to your impact, and do that in 75 characters. If you can't do it, it's going to be hard for you to teach people how to write concise essays. So just as like a preview on some of the key points, I think really focus on those baseline things and consider yourself relative. Use all the other coaches on the platform as examples that you can potentially steal from.
Awesome. Mahmood, anything you'd want to add?
I would just double down on the pricing point. I actually had a client who I'd done one of my when I did the free calls with like 200 people. I remember talking to this girl. She was working in consulting and she wanted to apply an MBA at some point. So she hit me up a year and a half later after our first call. She didn't remember this actually that we had had that conversation, but I did. And then we had an intro call and it went, I went like 30 minutes over because I was really trying to make sure that she was comfortable with how we would work going forward. In the end, she ended up not going with me. I found out the reason why was because I way undercharged, and you know who she went to? She went to Ben. So I was the cheap boxed wine in that scenario. So maybe I think the pricing, and it took me about a year to learn this, really does signal a lot more um, than we might expect. But beyond that, I would say to the extent you can control your own online kind of presence, I think people look at your profile and they see what you have on Leland. But then so oftentimes I also hear like, oh, I saw you on Leland, then I looked you up. So to the extent that you can maybe have articles that you write, that you post, of course, your LinkedIn is in your control. All that supplementary information I think is critically important in addition to your actual main profile.
I love it. Okay, we're gonna fly through. Really, really important reviews, the headline, quantify it, like have actual things that stand out. So like, where did you work? What are your key names? What, like, Lindsay, I know you worked at Google for years, like that, those are things people want. Like they want to see what makes this person stand out. Why should I work? People love brand names. They love like status. They love that when they're looking to hire a coach. Always make a video. I know this isn't required to get through, but people watch the videos. It helps them connect with you as a person, helps them, get that personalized invitation from you to say, hey, if you're interested, reach out. That warm invitation is going to make a good impact. Profile picture matters, quantified. So you can look here, you see like 10 years, HBS, like where they worked, all of that.
Yeah, and Erica, on that last slide though, just super fast, like I think it's important to just one thing, like the reason that the ones on the left are so common, honestly common on the platform still to some degree, but aren't that good is because they're totally undifferentiated and kind of vague or implied in other parts of the profile or in what you should be delivering. So if I wrote, for example, Stanford Graduate School of Business class of 2021, like that's already in my profile. Why is that commanding 90% of your header? That's not helpful. MBB case interview expert. Yeah, I thought so. You worked at McKinsey. I sure hope you're on the platform to teach me about some cases. So try to think about like, okay, what can I use this header space for that isn't redundant, especially because that's something you definitely don't need.
100%. Thanks. Yeah, video. So make a good video, good lighting, not too long, and a strong pitch call to action. I think this is the most important part is introduce yourself, highlight your coaching, and then include some sort of invitation. So go book an intro call with me or reach out. Some coaches even say like, reach out for a free resume guide. If you send me a message, I will send you a free resume guide, something that gets them excited to contact you. Also, I know we're at time, so if you need to drop, totally fine. I'm going to try to wrap up in the next 2 minutes. So I apologize for being a little over. Qualification section. This is probably my biggest plug on this entire presentation. I've seen a lot of coaches not build this out. This is the first thing people read on your profile. So quantify it, talk about why you're an expert. I have people who are on the site who interviewed for like a top investment bank for 10 years, and that's not even in this section. Like that should be here so clearly. Your bio, why I coach, some good pointers here. I can send this out as well, but this is really where people connect with you as a human. They learn about you, what kind of people you want to work with, your coaching style, etc. Reviews. Yep. To Ben's point, actively request them. A lot of times they won't remember, but if you follow up, some coaches will even say, hey, I'll give you 10% off our next session if you submit a review. You don't have to do that. Hopefully the experience is so positive that they're excited to leave you one, but whatever you need to get those reviews on your page. All right, we are at time. Thank you for being here. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to stay on for 3 more minutes. Mahmood, Ben, do you guys have a few minutes to spare?
Totally.
Awesome. Anyone want to come off mute or?
I'd love to. Before you guys have to go, this is like a superstar room. Mahmood's the reason why I'm coaching on here. Ben and Erica, you two were like, I recruited you guys to UF at an event, and ever since then, the Leland connection has been strong. So the thing is like I think especially for Mahmood and Ben, you guys are, I would say, like superstars on Leland by now. Very established, like probably have like a very strong pipeline going in. If you guys can remember when you were starting from like 0 to 1, a lot of the like I think the methods of gaining clients are pretty guerrilla for me right now. And it led to I think influx of clients who weren't really like serious about coaching. We talk about a lot in the Slack, like people who are looking for free advice in that first 15-minute call. Um, is there a way or that you guys have found? I know we talked about like the sending like that screening method out, or like that one pager to clients before they meet. But is there any way that you have found that is like a good source outside of social media, perhaps like with your existing clients to attract that latent demand? So a lot of the people that I've been able to take advantage of, or not take advantage of, but clients who have outcomes that I've worked with, so like friends, family, siblings, who then like share me by word of mouth. But it's really hard to translate that into any kind of like meaningful scale online. So anything about perhaps translating like those in-person relationships, that latent demand that exists in like our informal networks into a more scalable online format. Like the ways that I work so far have been like making posts, but it's just very hard because those people aren't in that circle to begin with. So perhaps the answer is just it takes time, but any advice that you guys have is pretty appreciated.
I think I know you're in law school category, like for the LSAT stuff, and so I'll just speak to that, but I think this is true broadly. I would really take advantage of the fact that when you do an event, Leland sends them out to everyone on that list within the category. And there's people that, I mean, we all get these emails, right? Of like, this event is happening today, this event is happening the next day. Most people are not going to read all of them, but every now and then, if you keep doing it, that's going to keep aggregating. And so I think within most of the categories that people are representing today, you have enough not people nominally that like, if you just shuffle through a bunch of different events, that's going to help scale. I also think it's on the more kind of intentional personal side, it's like, don't be shy about talking about this. Like if you hear about someone that's like, oh yeah, my cousin's in final law school, it's like, oh, I'm happy to talk to them. I do think like there is a bit of a potential loss there in that like I'm not afraid in an intro call. If I have a bunch of people where I'm kind of telling them everything I know within 15 minutes and it becomes clear to me that they're not going to take on, like to me, that's okay. I know different people have a different calculation, but I have enough conversion from that where because I'm delivering so much real content in that 15 minutes, then they convert and they say, okay, now I see this whole other like means that you could like help me with down the line. So I think, being generous kind of what you know, particularly I think in a kind of test coaching capacity is helpful. And, just like keep talking to your friends. I mean, if you're in a university environment, I've tried to like do things here at Stanford in terms of talking to some of the GSB people, the law school people. Obviously that's different for people in different contexts, but I don't know. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you on trust the process with events. Like continuously push yourself. Each event, get a little bit better, get a little bit more precise with what you're offering. Try to figure out where you feel like you had a lot of questions last time. Even taking some like blitz notes after you finish an event of what went well, what could I have done better, where were most of the questions concentrated. How can you build collateral to answer those questions on your next event? It's often just like a really simple way to improve the continuous product that you're putting out there insofar as an event is a product. As for some of your questions around intro calls, I think this is super applicable to basically everybody who's building a coaching business on Leland. One really simple thing you should do is send a message to somebody who books a 15-minute intro call with you. If they don't respond to you after you respond to them and you ask a question of them, that's probably a reason for you to maybe temporarily put a hold on that intro call and say like, hey, we're happy to re-add the intro call, but want to have a better understanding of what your goals are, exactly what you're looking for help from the coaching side with. Because I think in general, when an intro call is just, hey, like I had somebody who reached out recently that was like, hey, like I'm looking for advice on like whether I should apply to MBA apps. And I think I'm really thinking about it. I'm a sophomore, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I don't personally have an offering right now for like helping people for 2 years out, try to transition necessarily to working on MBA and thinking through all of that. So I say something like, hey, are you thinking about getting coaching in the short term? I'm personally super freaking busy right now. So I can't be taking on 25 intro calls with random people who have thoughts that are kind of all over the place and aren't structured and focused on specific coaching things. So asking that question and starting an initial dialogue, if they don't respond to you, it's kind of like it's like the equivalent of somebody like they probably logged on to Leland at like 11 o'clock at night and booked up like 4 intro calls. And now they're like just sitting there and then they might know like the odds of that person no showing are so much higher than the average person who's like had a small dialogue with you beforehand. Ask them for materials, ask them for some background on themselves. Even just those small things, I would say, Sean, is a good way to figure out when you have those intro calls, if you're actually going to be spending that time efficiently. And then in terms of like building that latent pipeline and unlocking that latent demand, truly, it's amazing what Leland even offers on the event infrastructure side. Lean into building out events, just the capacity to be able to hold an event and get anywhere from 50 to 500 people to sign up and just get your face in front of them. Like over time, you will have a pipeline.
Yeah. If I can add one more thing, don't be afraid to do kind of joint events with people too. Like I'm not the heavy hitter of law school. That's like Indrani. It's like, hey, I want to kind of boost my profile on people that are seeing me. Like try to do things with 2 or 3 other people and then intersperse those with kind of solo events that you do.
Love it. Okay, this has been awesome. I hope this has been a great sales pitch as to why you should all come to all of our learning series. We're going to be doing a couple different things. We have this spring learning series that will be on Fridays, specific topics, but we'll also be dispersing throughout the next couple of months, like one-off sessions. For example, we will have one being scheduled kind of soon around just intro calls. So look out for that. But really our main goal is to help each of you be successful. We want to provide this info and help you out. And we're super grateful for Ben and Mahmoud and your time and being here today. So I hope each of you learned a ton. We'll get this recording uploaded early next week and looking forward to seeing you at future trainings. Thanks again. And
Thank
really
you. Have a great day
Thanks.
Good to
and
see you.
weekend. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.